Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of TCN Presents the Cultured Pull List. I'm your host, Michael, and I'm joined by Luke.
Hey,
Now, Luke, what are we talking about today?
in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the first three issues of Dark Crisis, as well as the prelude issue, Road to Dark Crisis.
Awesome, sounds great. Let's hop right into it. Alrighty, so Dark Crisis. Now, for anybody who isn't, well, actually, first let's do a bit of a spoiler warning here. So this is your official spoiler warning. We are going to be delving into the Dark Crisis storyline. So if you don't want any spoilers, now's your chance to not watch this, I guess.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so Dark Crisis. For anyone who's not aware of what Dark Crisis is, it's basically like the latest DC like huge crossover event. I think the last one was Death Metal. Is that?
I think it was, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was Death Metal. Yeah.
Yeah. So these events always have like huge implications and effects on the DC universe. And in all honesty, they're usually kind of an excuse to like reboot stuff,
Right.
or at least change stuff around. Which this series is no different, but we'll get into that later. So yeah, Dark Crisis. So honestly, when I first read the first issue, I like had no idea what was really going on because I hadn't read the prelude or or anything. Had you?
I was, I was aware of it. I was kind of really, I'm at school now, so I don't read comics as much as I used to. But back then, I was like really into like every week I would pick up issues, and I still do every week, although it's not as much. So yeah, I'd heard about it like several months ahead of time, and there was a couple of prelude issues that I've read leading into it, so I was aware of what was happening and kind of how it was a focus on some of those not smaller heroes, sort of like the legacy characters, which sounded really interesting to me.
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of took like somewhat of a break from comics for like a year or so.
Yeah.
I think the only ones I really kept up with was Superman. So I like had no idea what was really going on in the DC universe when I picked this up. I didn't even know like some of the newer characters that they brought in, like Yara as Wonder Girl. She's like from an Amazonian tribe in the actual Amazon rainforest. And then there's Tim Fox, who took over. Yeah, he took over as Batman. He's Lucius Fox's son. Well, not
he didn't take over as Batman. He's kind of like Batman. He's in New York, so it's kind of like Batman from somewhere else. They're Bruce Wayne's still Batman. It's just a different Batman.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny with all these comics. They just sort of like make new versions and just have them take up the same name.
Yeah.
Like they do all throughout. Like, I think, at some point, both Wally and Barry are Flash.
Right.
Hawkeye, like both Clint Barton and Kate Bishop are Hawkeye, to stuff like that. It's kind of interesting because they used to have like specific like names for like sidekicks and stuff. Now it's just kind of people pick up the mantle and it's just like the same name.
Sometimes it works. Like, I mean, technically it's all happened all the way back in the 60s when Barry Allen and like Hal Jordan, like they kind of, so sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
That's true.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, that's okay. So before the events of the first issue, you said you read it, but I didn't really. But I looked into it, and apparently Barry kind of stumbles into Multiverse 2, which is a separate multiverse from the main multiverse, but it's kind of like fractured and broken now.
Yeah, I think it is. I might be confused, but I think it's the same thing as the Dark Multiverse from Death Metal.
Yeah,
where it's sort of like a negative version of the multiverse that we're familiar with.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, it got kind of fractured from the events of Death Metal. But Barry ends up finding pre-crisis Pariah there, hanging out, and apparently he has kind of become one with the Great Darkness, which is basically just like some huge force that it's supposedly, it's supposed to be the darkness that was there before creation,
right?
And it's just been hanging out. But I guess it was supposed to have gone dormant for a long time. And
Mhm.
then Pariah kind of woke it up and sort of like bonded with it.
Yeah.
And he thinks he's controlling it, or that it's like be speaking to him and everything, but really he's just kind of corrupted it,
Mhm.
because he's kind of lost his mind. And he actually traps Barry in like this paradise world. And the Justice League, and I think they're called Justice Incarnate.
Yeah.
They're like multiversal Justice League. They show up and fight Pariah, but he's got this whole like army, this
Mhm.
whole dark army. I mean, it's got like huge villains like Darkseid and Doomsday, Eclipso, even the Spectre is there. Um,
Yeah.
so kind of a crazy lineup of villains anyway, but then with the Great Darkness or whatever, it kind of powers them up even more, and they end up like overpowering everyone. And
Mhm.
the Justice League are captured by Pariah. Like they're transported in like their own worlds, but we'll get into that later. Um, and the only one who survives is Black Adam, or at least the only one to escape. And that's pretty much where we pick up in uh, Dark Crisis issue 1. So,
Mhm.
Dark Crisis issue 1 is titled "The Justice League Are Dead." It was written by Joshua Williams, and the artist is Daniel Sempere. Sempere, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it was released on June 7th, 2022.
Mhm.
So this issue picks up with a voiceover from Dick Grayson.
Yeah.
Well, I say voiceover, it's obviously not, it's just boxes written on the page. But anyway, and it's just kind of just showing like a lot of his history and the history of the DC universe and all that stuff. And then it cuts to like a memorial basically, and it turns out that Dick is basically giving a eulogy to the Justice League, and like a bunch of pretty much the entire DC like superhero roster is there, a bunch of other people, and then it actually shows Deathstroke and some villains up on a roof, kind of watching the whole procession. Um, so, and then as things go on, there's no more Justice League, so a lot of the other heroes are like picking up the slack. Like Wally is, basically like the main Flash now.
Mhm.
Jonathan Kent is the main Superman. All that stuff, and uh, all these doomsday cults start crawling out of the woodwork. And I'm pretty sure Flash even mentions that, or Wally mentions
Right.
that it's not like the heavy hitter villains, it's all these like doomsday cults. They seem to be desperate and know that like the world is coming to an end or something, at least they think so.
Mhm.
And during a battle with Cobra, Wally and John see Hal Jordan show up. Apparently, he was on vacation or something, and he shows up, and he doesn't know what's been going on at all.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then they end up talking to Black Adam, who apparently, he escaped Pariah, but now he's recovering, and he tells everyone that the Justice League are dead because he thinks they are, and mentions all the villains Pariah is controlling, and like this great darkness and everything. And Hal's not too pleased that they're trusting Black Adam,
Mm.
but they haven't really had the time to investigate what he said.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure even like Dr. Fate tried to find evidence of the Great Darkness or the Justice League with his spells, and he couldn't find anything, presumably because they're on like the other multiverse
Mhm.
too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all that's happening, and John is inspired to start a new Justice League because obviously the world needs a Justice League.
Right.
So he goes to Wonder Girl Yara, which we mentioned earlier. Um, and yeah, I was really confused when I first read this. I'm like, wait a minute, there's another Wonder Girl, because like at first I thought it was Donna Troy, and I was like, that doesn't look like Donna
No.
Troy. And then she said her name was Yara. I was like, okay, I just have no idea who
Yeah.
this is. No.
This is technically the third Wonder Girl, and they're all like
Yeah.
active at the same time because the Young Justice has Cassandra Sandsmark, I believe her name is. So
Yeah.
there's I don't think Donna Troy is going by Wonder Girl currently, but she's
No.
technically somewhere in that.
It isn't is she back to being Troya or I don't
I
know.
think she's just calling herself Donna Troy now. I'm not sure.
Creative. All right, but anyway, yeah, so um yeah, he asked Yara, and she's basically like, "I just became Wonder Girl. I'm not gonna join the Justice League. What are you nuts? You know?" So
Mhm.
then he goes and talks to Tim Fox, trying to recruit him and kind of make like he even says something about like, "Is it time for a new World's Finest?" To try and do like a team up with him, and he's like, "Yeah, the last Batman who joined the Justice League died. I'm good on my own. Why don't you ask one of the Robins?" So John does, and he does end up. Gathering quite a few characters
Yeah.
um, for his new Justice League. Like there's Supergirl, both Blue Beetles, Ted Cord and Jaime Reyes, Doctor Light, I think Killer Frost, Booster Gold, Aqualad, or not Tim Drake, is Damien, I'm pretty sure,
Yeah.
and Harley Quinn. And I don't remember what that guy's name is. He looks like
I
Frankenstein.
think it is Frankenstein, just
Is
DC's
it?
version of Frankenstein. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that's his group, and it's a pretty decent group. Like it's not all new characters, which I appreciated.
Hmm.
It's got the both Blue Beetles, which I'm a big fan of both of them,
Yeah.
and I like Booster Gold. I feel like I don't know if Harley really needed to be in that group, but
Mm.
like it feels like DC is just really pushing like Harley Quinn like the
Yes.
last 10 years.
10 years, but yeah.
Especially, yeah. But anyway, but I like the rest of the lineup.
Hmm.
But Black Adam isn't so impressed. he
Yeah.
he doesn't seem to think that they're going to measure up, and that most of them are too young.
Yeah, and reading it, I kind of got the same impression. I feel
Hmm.
like none of these characters, except maybe
Yeah,
John and Damien, are like heavy
yeah,
hitters, and so I kind of had the idea that this was just
yeah.
like a like they're gonna try to to fight the darkness, and they're gonna fail, and
Hmm.
then the real
Yeah,
heroes are gonna come at the end, and
right.
and that's kind of what happens
Wow,
with
what a
Nightwing and
surprise.
Black
Yeah,
Adam.
right. Yeah. So, um, yeah, I'm Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Like they really weren't the heavy hitters. They almost feel like one of those like offshoot teams.
Mm.
Like if they're gonna do like I don't know. Like I'm trying to think of a DC equivalent, but like with Marvel, there's like West Coast Avengers. It
Oh, okay.
almost feels kind of like that. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
like the main. It doesn't feel like Justice League really.
Hmm.
Feels like Justice League Junior or something.
Right.
Even though there are members on there who have been part of the main Justice League, they aren't like you said, that the heavy hitters.
Yeah.
Um, but while all this is happening, Dick is at Titan's Tower running, which is I guess is they're calling it like Titan's Academy now or something.
Yeah, that was a series for a while, and it got
Okay,
canceled early, and so this is kind of like the culmination of that.
gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
so Dick is training Titans at Titan's Tower, and then I forget the character's name, but a guy stumbles in who's on the team, and he's got like a bomb strapped to him.
Mm.
And the bomb goes off and like blows up the tower. And we kind of pan to outside the tower, and Deathstroke is leading this like gigantic team of villains to attack Titan's tower. So, yeah, things aren't looking too good. And the very like last couple pages of this issue ends with a shadowy figure talking to himself about the multiverse. We see multiverse 2, it's all cracked and broken.
Mhm.
And if you read the or the prelude, which I did not, you would probably assume this is Pariah,
Yeah.
because he's mumbling about the multiverse and seemingly talking to himself. And then it does end up revealing Pariah in like this decked out, like it's kind of like a revamped Monitor armor. I think
Mhm.
it is supposed to be like the Monitor or the Anti-Monitor's armor. I think didn't Superboy Prime use like a version of that armor too at
Yeah, I
some
think
point?
so.
Yeah,
That
so I
sounds about right.
think yeah, I think it yeah, so so he's kind of like repurposed it now.
Mhm.
So, what were your thoughts overall about this first issue?
I really liked it. I feel like it
Yeah.
started out strong.
Hmm.
Yeah, like I said, like they're definitely setting this team up to fail, it feels like, but
Yeah.
I really liked it. Nightwing is one of my favorite characters. I'm glad he
Yeah.
gets the spotlight. I have
Hmm.
issues with Black Adam later on in the series, but he starts out
Hmm.
really strong in my opinion.
Okay.
What about you?
Yeah, I like you said. I like that Nightwing kind of starts to get the spotlight, and in this series as a whole, he really
Yeah.
does get the spotlight. I do like that they're kind of focusing on these newer characters because I think
Mhm.
the ones that they picked are pretty cool.
Right.
I don't think they've picked ones that I found like dumb or anything. Like I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of newer characters, they're either hit or miss, whether they're
Yeah.
interesting or not. So I liked that, and it's cool that they're kind of focusing on the Titans characters.
Mhm.
Um, and Black Adam, yeah, I kind of like that he's. I like I said, I hadn't really been keeping up, so apparently he kind of was part of the Justice League. Like Superman wanted him to be on the Justice League, so he was kind of a new member. I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting way to take him. It's kind of like the movie, and some
Mhm.
other comics where he's more of an anti-hero,
Yeah.
kind of toes the line. I find that more interesting than when he's just a straight up villain.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. What do you think about them setting up Pariah as like the big bad for this whole series?
Yeah, so we're calling it Dark Crisis, but the full
Hmm.
title is Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, and so
Right.
it's very much a sequel to the original Dark Crisis, and so I feel
Hmm.
like if you're going at it from that angle, then I kind of think he's really the only villain who can be
Yeah.
there. Um,
Unless you want
yeah,
to like resurrect the anti monitor or something,
right.
which
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of would have been boring.
Yeah, and I guess now thinking about it like that, it kind of brings up an issue that I have, I guess, with it. I would have almost
Hmm.
preferred if they made it less cosmic and just kind of focused
Mm,
more on just these characters trying to figure out the world without a Justice League.
mm.
That would have been more interesting in my opinion, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think that would have been cool for like a setup because like I feel like you can't have like a huge crisis level event if you
Yeah,
don't do like
fair
crazy
enough.
cosmic stuff. So, but yeah, it would have been cool if there was like a separate series or like a
Yeah.
prelude or prologue or yeah, prologue series with that stuff like them
Mhm.
because it does feel a little bit rushed. I will
Yeah.
say now that you mention it, it's kind of like the Justice League is like gone, and then John tries to make a new one, and then the Titans get attacked, just kind of like
Right.
bam, bam, bam. But anyway, I think that's pretty much all from issue one. Pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Maybe a little rushed, but oh yeah, I did want to say I really like the art
Mm.
in these books. Daniel Sempier, however you
Yeah.
say his name. I really like his art style. I really
Mhm.
like styles like that are kind of realistic looking, but
Okay.
still keep the really cool look of the heroes. Doesn't try and make them too like gritty looking, but doesn't shy away from all the cool colors, but still makes them like realistic looking. I feel like that really like draws
Yeah.
me into the story.
Yeah, and on that note, one of the things that makes the original Crisis so
Mm,
iconic is George Perez's artwork and the way that
mm,
he incorporates literally every character that DC had
yeah.
in their roster. And this is from issue 6. I don't know if you can see it, but
Okay.
I just really like how they
Yeah,
include
that
like all of the
I
characters.
remember that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I remember reading that, thinking like that's
yeah,
so freaking cool.
yeah. So I just like the big shots where they include like
Hmm.
everybody fighting, and I really like that.
Yeah, yeah, same. Yeah. So I guess let's move on to issue two,
Okay.
titled. Here, let me get this out of the way.
Oh,
Titled "Fall of the Titans." It's written. It's the same author, same artist, and it was released on July 5th, 2022.
mhm.
So this starts out. I mean, it picks up pretty much where the last one left off.
Yeah.
Deathstroke is attacking Titan's tower. Huge aftermath, and pretty much as they're about to enter the tower, they end up like encountering Beast Boy, and Deathstroke shoots him in the head.
Mhm.
So, yikes.
Yeah.
They don't reveal at that point whether Beast Boy survived that or not.
Mhm.
I kind of assume that they just totally offed Beast Boy. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like what? It's one of the main Titans. You're just gonna shoot him, and then damn.
Yeah, that would have been incredibly bold, and I almost would have
Yes.
preferred that, but because it's a comic and they need these characters to go on, it makes sense that they brought it
Yeah,
back.
I feel like they would have resurrected him in 3 years anyway
Yeah,
if they
yeah.
had, or yeah, but yeah, so Deathstroke storms the tower, and pretty much everyone in the tower is already beat up from the explosion.
Mhm.
And he reveals that he actually has his whole like secret society like attacking heroes all over the world.
Yeah.
So everyone's basically being hit at the same time. But
Mhm.
it seems like his main onslaught is the Titans,
Right.
presumably because of Dick and his history with them and everything. So Nightwing is really beat up, but he ends up fighting Slade one on one anyway,
Yeah.
which I thought was super cool
Oh,
that they
yeah.
had like, an extra, because like when was the last time Nightwing and Deathstroke has had like a 1v1 like
Yeah.
throwdown? It's been a while.
Yeah, and because, it what makes it even better is because Deathstroke started out as a Titans villain anyway, and so it
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
we've gone full circle.
yeah, exactly. It's like an old rivalry
Right.
coming back together. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was very cool. And what was even cooler is Nightwing actually won.
Yeah.
Um, Pretty much, and then at the very last minute, like he even like told Slade to yield, and Deathstroke just pulled out his staff and tried to
Mhm.
shoot Dick, which is really cool. I couldn't find this photo online, so let
Okay.
me pull it up. Let me just show you in the comic. I really like this one part with
Oh, with John?
John,
Yeah.
yeah, like just showing up out of nowhere and
Mhm.
blocking the bullet. I thought that was really cool. And for a minute there's like a little bit of a team up with Jonathan and Nightwing, which I thought was really cool. Like I think that's
Yeah.
way cooler than him with any other Robin, or with,
Yeah. I
Tim
think so.
Fox as Batman. I just think that would be a cooler like New World's Finest
Mm.
than, because I feel like Nightwing pretty much is, whenever Bruce isn't there, he pretty much is Batman. He always steps up. He's like the original,
Right.
adopted son. He's basically like Bruce's second in command usually. So
Mhm.
he's kind of, so I feel like he's the best equivalent to what Jonathan Kent is, to
Right.
Superman. I kind of wish there was a little bit more of a team up, but
Mm.
unfortunately, Cyborg Superman shows up and ends up starting a huge beat down
Mhm.
on Jonathan, which like they were pretty evenly matched.
Yeah.
I feel like Jonathan is portrayed as being a little weaker
Mhm.
than his dad, because he is
Yeah.
younger and he's
And
definitely like
he's
smaller.
he's half human as well, so he's
That's
not
true.
full
Yeah.
Kryptonian.
That's true too. I don't know why that slipped my mind, but yeah, yeah. So he's definitely not as strong, but he's still pretty darn strong. He's able to hold his own against
Yeah.
Cyborg Superman. They slug it out, and it's pretty much a standstill for the
Mhm.
most part. Like John is pretty beat up, so is Cyborg Superman. But before Cyborg Superman can do anything more, Cyborg just comes out of nowhere and just like caves his head in, which
Mm.
was like pretty freaking brutal.
Yeah.
Honestly, like it was just one panel, but I'm like, damn, he just crushed his skull. But and he
Mhm.
says like, you give all cyborgs a bad name, which I thought was pretty cool. Like
Yeah.
I feel like Cyborg wasn't given a whole lot to do
Mhm.
up to this point, and really this whole series, but I like that he got to have that moment.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, oh yeah, that's right. And around when this is happening, Slade basically is being, it's revealed that he's being controlled by Pariah. Like he's using
Mhm.
the great darkness to kind of like influence his mind, and he's basically talking to him. And Slade seems to be in pain, like he wants him to get out of his head, but it doesn't seem to be working. It seems like Slade's kind of slowly succumbing to this, but he seems like Pariah seems to want Deathstroke to like attack all the heroes, presumably to start some sort of crisis. He keeps saying like start a new crisis.
Yeah.
So I found that kind of interesting. Especially like throughout this whole series, Slade is really interesting because he doesn't quite act like he normally does, in
Mhm.
multiple ways. We'll talk about that more probably next episode, but Like in this, I was kind of wondering like why he just sort of attacked out of nowhere. Like it's not so much that he attacked the Titans, but the fact that he's attacking all the heroes,
Right.
because like global domination was never really his thing,
Mhm.
so but it makes sense when if he's being controlled by Pariah and they're doing this on purpose,
Yeah.
So I found that interesting. And oh yeah, in the aftermath of Titan's Tower being destroyed, Black Adam shows up, who just kind of flew off in the last issue, and he's basically like, "Wow, you totally messed this up and failed," like saying to
Mhm.
John, like, "I knew you were too young to lead this team,"
Right.
and then he says, like, "From now on, I'm gonna be," like he
Mm.
basically takes control of the new Justice League from John for the most part, and
Yeah.
is intent on training them to
Mhm.
be as good as he thinks the new Justice League should be.
Right.
And then, yeah, at the very end, we see Kyle Rayner, who is
Mhm.
apparently in an alien prison. I'm not really sure why,
Yeah.
but there's that, and he's escaping from the prison. But right as he's like about to escape, Hal Jordan shows up with
Mhm.
what's her name, Joe Mullion. She's a newer Green Lantern character. She
Yeah.
was introduced in like the last couple years. I'm not super familiar with her, but they both show up to presumably spring Kyle, and
Mhm.
at like the very last shot is like the entire Green Lantern Corps
Yeah.
that apparently Hal brought with him for some reason that they haven't revealed yet. And that's
Mhm.
how that ends. So, thoughts on this issue?
Yeah, I like that maybe even more than the first one. There's less
Mm.
setup and more just kind of action.
Mm-hmm.
And like we
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, Nightwing gets a lot of play. And I,
Yeah.
I I did mention this before, but I actually this might be controversial, but I do actually like John Kent as Superman. And
Yeah.
so he has some pretty cool moments in this that I enjoyed.
Well, yeah, like because he's not a replacement of Superman, which I feel
Right.
like a lot of people were portraying him as.
Yeah.
Like not the comics, but like fans who were mad about it. But
Mhm.
I never got that impression.
Right.
It's like the same thing. Like Kate Bishop didn't replace Clint Barton.
Right. Right.
Just all that kind of stuff. Like they're both Superman, so
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
didn't bother me at all. And I do like him. I honestly like it a lot more with him as like a young adult than him as a kid.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to take like kid heroes that seriously.
Mhm. Yeah.
So since they aged him up, he's a lot more interesting and cool to me. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
totally cool with him in this. And it makes more sense than like Connor being the replacement Superman, because that's
Yeah.
never something he really wanted to do.
Mhm.
And yeah, so yeah, I agree with you. This issue has a lot more action. Like that whole sequence, like a whole battle in Titan's Tower was super cool.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned earlier, the battle between Nightwing and Deathstroke was super cool, and also the fight between John and Cyborg Superman. Like I kind of wonder where he came from. He just sort of appeared out of nowhere, Cyborg Superman,
Yeah.
but it was still cool. Um,
Mhm.
well, and Deathstroke did like specifically have him there in case John showed up, but you know, still
Yeah.
kind of. I'm kind of shaky with like the continuity of Cyborg Superman at this point because they've done so many things with him. Like he showed up as a like pretending to be Superman originally. Then
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure Hank Henshaw, like that version, he died at some point. And
Yeah.
then in the New 52, it was I think Superman's uncle who was Cyborg Superman.
Okay.
And then I guess they changed it back to Hank Henshaw. He's one of those
Yeah.
characters that's really confusing.
And in some versions, it's, Supergirl's father, and so I don't know if that's a 3rd
That's
Cyborg Superman or the same one.
no, that's what I was talking about.
Okay.
Superman's uncle.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
Supergirl's dad. I forget his name, but yeah. So yeah, that was issue 2.
Yeah,
Now, last one, issue 3, which is called Boot Camp. Same author, same artist as the other two, and it was released on August 2nd, 2022. Now, I could be wrong, but this one feels the shortest so
okay.
far. At least when I was flipping through them, I was like, this one feels a lot thinner. It might have been just like the paper or something or the covers. I don't know, but
Mhm.
not as much happens, it
Okay.
feels like to me. Well, at least there's less scenes.
Mm.
Like it might be the same number of pages, but there's not as many like scene changes. So anyway, starting out, we kind of see the aftermath of Deathstroke's secret society and their attacks on heroes. Apparently, like some are even going into hiding so that they don't, get killed. And we do find out that Beast Boy is alive and he's in the hospital.
Yeah.
And we do see Nightwing in his hospital bed, and the rest of the Titans are outside, just kind of worried about them. And we do see a pot of flowers from the Doom Patrol.
Oh.
So, which, yeah, I'm not really sure what their connection to him is in the comics. All I know is from like the Titan series, where
Yeah,
he was
it's
like part of the Doom Patrol.
pretty similar to that. Like
Is it?
he was
Okay.
adopted by Elastigirl, I think.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that. Okay, cool. So then we cut to Black Adam, who we kind of have like a comic equivalent of a montage of the new Justice League going on missions across the world, while Black Adam's presumably been training them, and he's kind of giving them his, version of a pep talk, which is pretty much just like, stop sucking or you'll die. So there's that, and then it cuts to Black Adam, who is in the Hall of Justice, I believe, and he has Count Vertigo in a headlock, and he's basically like going to kill him in front of them. And most of the Justice League members are like not cool with it at all. I think Damian, in typical Damian fashion, doesn't care. But the rest of them are kind of protesting and is like, we need to interrogate him. And Damian's like, we don't need to interrogate him, kill him, And the rest are like, you can't just kill him. And then Black Adam's like, you're too weak to do what you have to do, yada, yada. And then Yara, Wonder Girl, actually shows up and prevents Black Adam from killing Vertigo. And Black Adam basically storms off in a huff and is like, you guys suck, He just, I think he says like, you're a waste of my time. And I guess he's pretty much done with the team. But unfortunately, that seems to kind of spark the rest of the team kind of disbanding a bit.
Yeah.
Like Aqualad has to go to Atlantis. Blue Beetle has to go check on his family. Everyone seems to be leaving. And it seems like it's just Yara and John at this point. And like at that moment, Yara said she's going to join the team, after the attack on Titan's Tower. But at this point, it seems like they're like the only two members of the Justice League now. But just at that moment, the Justice Society shows up, like the whole team, like Alan Scott, Dr. Fate, Atom Smasher, a bunch of others.
Yeah.
They actually have a pretty big roster, but you don't see them a whole lot, like as part of the Justice Society.
Yeah.
Like you see some of them separate, like especially Dr. Fate. He does a lot by himself. But yeah, so they show up and they're going to help John protect the Earth pretty much. And then we cut to Deathstroke's lair pretty much, his HQ. And he's still wrestling with Pariah. Like Pariah is still like his evil Jiminy Cricket kind of thing, just like telling him like, do this, and he's like, oh, I don't want to, but he's just kind of succumbing to it anyway. And while he's having this like internal struggle in his head, his men, whatever villains they are, I'm really not sure, they end up throwing his daughter Rose at his feet, and like she was trying to sneak in presumably to kill you. And they have like an exchange of words, like not really worth getting into too much. But then like right in the middle of their conversation, pretty much, it seems like Deathstroke is like fully possessed by the Great Darkness and just like fully succumbs to it. And he basically possesses or corrupts like all the villains that are around him, like all his men. It was actually reminded me a lot of Atrocitus and the Red Lanterns, like how they like spew like a red plasma or something out of them. It was kind of the same thing, like this black just like came out of Deathstroke and like went in the other guys' mouths. I feel like if it were like a live action like movie or show or something, it'd be kind of like almost like a horror scene. I feel like, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, and now that you mention it, I think there was definitely something like that in the Titans TV show or something. I remember like in some live action superhero thing, there was definitely some black stuff that came out of someone's mouth at some point. I don't remember. It's all kind of blended together.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Yeah, so then we cut to Hal and the Green Lantern Corps, Hal basically took all the Green Lanterns to this giant rebuilt Black Lantern,
Mhm.
which he thinks is related to the Great Darkness.
Yeah.
And he thinks like he knows that Pariah is involved from Black Adam's story, and he thinks that the Black Lantern is going to take him to Pariah. So he ends up going through the lantern. Him, Kyle, and Joe, all three go into the lantern, and it does just kind of like spit them out right at Pariah's feet, pretty much. And
Mhm.
there's this pretty cool fight between them, and we do see like these little like orbs. They look like small like Earths
Yeah.
floating around Pariah, and they each have a Justice League member symbol on them, like the
Mhm.
Superman one, Wonder Woman one, and Pariah mentioned something about the Earth Zero Justice League, which Earth Zero is like the main
Yeah.
DC Earth at
Earth
this
Prime
point.
is what it used to be called.
Yeah, that's right. I knew it
Yeah.
wasn't always called Earth Zero. Yeah, so he says all the Earth Zero heroes are special and they're all a world of themselves,
Mhm.
which is interesting. Not 100% sure what that means at this point, but then there's like a big fight, and there's this really cool part, which I'm gonna hold it up again. There's this cool part where Hal basically creates a construct version of all the Justice League
Mm.
members.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool. Just that whole fight was pretty cool. It was mostly like Pariah versus Hal, but
Yeah.
then at the end, Kyle and Joe kind of help out, and Hal sees one of the Earths, but it's got his logo on. It's got the Green Lantern emblem on it. So he
Mhm.
goes over and touches it. I'm not. He says something about like he wants to end this, but it doesn't really. Not really sure why he grabs that. But
Yeah.
he is seemingly disintegrated, but really he's transported to whatever like world this is, and it's like a completely Green Lantern themed world. And
Yeah.
then these three lanterns show up. One looks like Judge Justice, and they mentioned something about him being in Sector John Stewart,
Mhm.
and he's like, "What?" So that's where we leave off with Hal.
Yeah.
Um, and then the last scene is Black Adam landing in some like forest or swamp somewhere. And then he starts talking to somebody saying that, he was foolish to think that he could do anything with the new Justice League. They're too weak, all that stuff. And it turns out he's talking to Lex Luthor and the Legion of Doom. And
Mhm.
he's basically going to join forces with them, which is pretty, on brand for Black Adam. He's usually a villain.
Yeah.
So this is obviously teasing, um, a fight between the Legion of Doom and Deathstroke's team,
Mhm.
which I find I kind of found pretty interesting. Like they sort of did this kind of storyline in I think it's called like Forever Evil or something, where
Okay. Yeah.
the villains had to. I think that this is a New 52 storyline, but
Mhm.
the Justice League was defeated by like Earth 3, the Injustice League, I think they're called. There's like
Yeah.
Ultraman and Owlman, all those people.
Oh, man. Right.
They were defeated by them and the Injustice Society, whatever it's called. I kind of forget. They basically took over the Earth Prime,
Mhm.
and the villains had to step up and save the world, basically. So it kind of reminds me of that, where the villains are kind of, even though they're not necessarily doing it for like the greatest of reasons, like
Yeah.
to save the world necessarily. It's more like they don't want the world to end up being worse off than it was, kind of thing.
Yeah, they're basically just fighting for their own survival as opposed to, like, the greater good.
Right, exactly. Or like in Lex Luthor's case, it's usually like nobody can rule the earth but me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I found that setup pretty interesting, and I think I did like Black Adam more being on the heroes team,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's more true to his character that he would just go to because he's been on the Legion of Doom's team like several times, I
Yeah.
think. So it wasn't super surprising that he went there. And frankly, there are more heavy hitters on the Legion of Doom's team right now than there
Yeah.
really are on the Justice League team. So
Right.
yeah. So what did you think overall of this third issue?
I liked it. I didn't
Mhm.
think I liked it as much as number 2, but, it was
Yeah.
still pretty strong. It's
Yeah.
sort of it doesn't answer all the questions, but it kind of
Mm.
reveals that the Justice League's not dead. They're kind of all in their own little
Mhm.
worlds, and it's revealed later on that Pariah's kind of sucking their power from them, and it's kind of powering his
Yeah.
machine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I was really confused. Like, just going into this series, I was really not sure what the heck was going on because I didn't read the prologue. So I
yeah,
was like, where did they go exactly? But
mhm,
going back, knowing what happened and kind of like rereading it, I'm like, okay, yeah, this makes a lot more sense now. What happened to them. And I feel like this really leads into some really cool stuff in later issues, which don't
yeah,
want to talk about that now.
mhm,
But yeah, and something I forgot to mention earlier in the first issue, when Hal ends up um, revealing himself to Wally and John. Um, Pretty soon after that, I'm pretty sure he convinces Wally to go try and find um, Barry.
yeah.
And so Wally ends up going and recruiting the rest of the speedsters, and they go to find Barry, which I could be wrong, but I feel like it's probably like a tie-in comic.
Yeah, that's kinda what I
I'm
was
guessing.
gonna say. Because like, each world, there's sort
Yeah.
of like a one shot, a world without a Justice League, where it's
Hmm.
like, this is Batman's little world, this is Superman's little
Hmm.
world, and so we kind of get to explore that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so which is kinda what I was gonna say next, because like,
Hmm.
normally with these big series, there's a bunch of, like, a bunch of tie-ins that you have to read in order to
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
everything, which is what I like about this, because there are tie-ins, but you don't necessarily have to read
Hmm.
them. And this came out at the same time as the Marvel event, AXE Judgment Day,
You're
which had
right.
a bunch of different crossovers, and you had to read all of them to understand the whole thing.
Yeah, I really
Yeah,
hate that. Because it's like, why don't you like? I much prefer them just having the actual like crossover series, like as a collectible series in and of itself.
yeah,
Because it's too difficult to try and find like every single issue from every series. Like,
right.
got to get an X-Men one and an Avengers one, and also like freaking like Kitty Pryde issue if they have that series. I don't know.
Yeah,
Like there's like they do offer checklist, but it's still just like a pain when you end up having to collect 20 freaking issues.
right.
That like you said, they did a really good job with Dark Crisis with keep like you can read the other stuff, it adds to the story,
Yeah,
but you don't need to read you just need to read the main 7 to really get the
right,
whole
right.
main narrative, which was pretty cool. I definitely appreciated that.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was the first 3. Did you have anything else you wanted to add about them?
No, I think it pretty much covers it.
Yeah. Yeah. If you have not read these, I would definitely suggest checking
Yeah,
out the whole Dark Crisis series. Very cool.
mhm.
I've honestly enjoyed pretty much every like major crossover event they've had recently. Like Death Metal was really cool.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember. Like Rebirth
mhm.
was like okay. Like there wasn't a whole
Yeah,
lot. Oh yeah, Doomsday Clock.
Doomsday
That one
Clock.
was very cool.
Yeah, there was
Um,
one, I don't remember where it was, but it was Heroes in Crisis. I didn't care for that one
mhm,
too much.
mhm.
I can't remember. It was 2018, I think. I don't
Okay.
remember if it was before or after Death Metal. But other
Okay.
than that, the rest of them were pretty good.
I think it was before because Death Metal was like 2020, I think.
Okay.
It was pretty recent.
Yeah.
That Death Metal was interesting because there was like just a complete like Death Metal um series, but
Yeah.
then there was like a million like it was a really long
Yes.
prologue, like there was Dark Knights Metal, which
Mhm.
there were several different crossovers and issues of that which
Yeah.
all led up to Death Metal. So when I did start Death Metal, I was like, "What's going on?"
Mhm.
That is the one thing I will say is a little annoying about a lot of these crossover events. Is like
Mhm.
if you don't read the prologue or the lead ups to it, you're
Yeah.
very lost about what the heck is going on.
Mhm.
Um, like Infinite Crisis, I think I did read like the prologue to that, but I can't imagine like what I would be thinking if I hadn't read the prologue to it.
Yeah.
Um, just stuff like that. I kind of wish they would at least do some sort of like recap or something, which I
Mm.
will say is a bit of a leg up in Marvel's case. In most of their comics, on the title sheet on the title page,
Yeah.
they will have like a recap of like
Mhm.
the last, the main plot points from the last
Right.
several series. so it doesn't really matter where you end up picking up a comic, you'll kind of get the idea of what's going on. I really wish DC did that, at least did that more often.
Yeah.
But anyway, that is that. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching or listening if you're listening to the audio. If you want to support us and help keep the lights on, check us out at patreon.com/ actually, that's the wrong one. Patreon.com/The Cultured Nerd, and look for our show specifically. If you would like to support me and Luke and our show, there's a specific tier for us. I have been your host, Michael Malillo, and my co-host is Luke S.
Yep.
And thank you to our current Patreon supporters. And yeah, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to check out The Cultured Nerd on social media and everything else, check out the QR code on the bottom left. And if you want to check out me and Luke's podcast, Casual Experts Only, plus our social media and YouTube channel, all those links are going to be that QR code on the right. Thank you, everyone, once again for watching. We'll see you next time.
Peace.